What's up, Sam?
What's up, buddy?
Um, so thank you for doing this.
Yeah,
You
of
know,
course. Stoked to be here.
this is something we wanted to do when you were here a few months ago, but that bottle of JMO and those stormy nights kind of took us by a storm.
Mm. Dark cold nights in Bristol.
Yeah, I don't know how cold it was though. Was it
It
cold?
was snowing. I mean, there was snow, which for southern England isn't always the norm.
You were here when there was snow.
Yeah, freaking out. It was pretty funny.
Yeah, everyone was freaking out. Wow, you were here a while ago.
Yeah, December, London, Bristol, and then up to Oxford for that conference.
Damn, time is flying a little too quickly. Anyways.
Anyways,
Sam, you have been one of my friends since I think before we even knew who we were, literally as beings, thanks to our parents.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. I don't think we knew what the word friend meant at that point.
I don't think we knew our own names. I don't think I did. I can't speak for you. I know I did. I didn't. It took me a while to learn how to read.
I remember.
Yeah. Uh, so I wanted to speak to you today because you have always been a very positive example in my life, a positive person. Your family's always been a source of light and support for me and my family for as long as I can remember. Even when we weren't going to the same school, there was like a 6 year period where we didn't really communicate very much because there was really no reason to. But then when we got back together, I think it was sophomore year, it was
Mm.
just like it was seamless. So that on top of the fact that you're doing what you're doing now, um, which I'll let you talk about in a minute, is the reason why I really feel compelled to interview you for this Rise and Thrive series because you truly are one of the most genuine, good, conscientious people I've ever met. Like if I litter by accident, you give me shit. If I don't turn the tap off on the water when I don't really need it, you give me shit. And that's something that you're kind of taught as a little kid, to be aware of the environment and conscious about all that stuff. But as you get older, people tend to let that go to the wayside and just kind of get lazy about it. But the fact that you stick to it and you like hold me accountable is one thing, and also just your passion for what it is you do is another. So, without further ado, I'd like you to just go ahead and tell the world a little bit about Coral Vita and what it is and how you've gotten to this point with it, and then we'll backtrack a little and do something that I haven't done, which I'm excited about. So we'll see how it goes.
All right. Excited to see what that is. Well, I'll just also start by saying I'm always inspired by you. Your family's my family. You decided you wanted to be an actor. I remember when you made that choice, and just like I didn't see it coming, but you. I didn't. I mean, you always were funny, and you could always, get people into like a scene. But you always had that passion for if you set your mind to it, you're going to do it, and you did it, and you're doing it, and it's awesome to see where you are. And yeah, thanks for inviting me on. It's cool to be here. So, to everyone out there, I'm one of the founders of Coral Vita, and it's a company that grows corals to restore dying reefs. So, coral reefs are one of the most magnificent ecosystems on the planet. From Finding Nemo to Blue Planet 2, you think about some of the most incredible creatures, spectacular colors, just mind blowing. Places on Earth, coral reefs really have got it. And I've been in love with the ocean since I was a kid. My parents got my brother and I scuba diving certification when we were old enough at 13, which eventually led to Tommy and his family getting him and his brother and sister certified. And yeah, I've always loved the sea. I didn't actually think I was gonna even work on the environment or the ocean or start up a company, but basically For those who don't know, coral reefs are in really bad shape. So more than 30% of the world's reefs have died since the 1970s, and we're projected to lose 75% or more by 2050. And you think about the big piece of news recently, was that the Great Barrier Reef, again, like, Finding Nemo is a movie that a lot of us grew up on, home to some of the best reefs in the world. Half the Great Barrier Reef died over the past 2 years from spikes in warming temperatures. So this isn't just some problem for the distant future. It's happening right now. So what we're doing at Coral Vita is we work with some of the world's best scientists in coral reefs, using their methods to grow corals up to 50 times faster, which means months instead of decades for some, while also strengthening their resiliency to some of the threats that are killing them, like climate change, warming, and acidifying oceans. So we grow corals in these land-based farms, pumping seawater through tanks till they're big and strong enough for us to then go back out to reefs and plant them in the ocean. And the sort of last piece of it is we've decided to transition reef restoration, which has been around for a number of years. There's really some amazing people doing coral farming projects all around the world for the past 20 years. Sorry, and I got to work on this sort of small scale grant funded project when I lived in Mauritius, the African nation off the coast of Madagascar, a few years back. We got a grant to restore part of one lagoon, and that's pretty much how all these projects go. And when we think about the scope of the problem, one grant to restore part of one reef isn't going to cut it. And so Gator, my co-founder, and his name is really Gator. Brothers are Moose and Grit. So Gator and I decided we want to start a company and try and create an industry around reef restoration where we get people to pay to restore reefs, and looking at not just how they're amazing from an ecological standpoint, but there's 1 billion people around the world that depend on reefs. 25% of all marine life is sustained by coral reefs. And then you've got about 30 billion a year generated from tourism, fisheries, coastal protection. So we get hotels that depend on scuba diving tourists, coastal property owners whose homes are sheltered by sort of the natural seawalls reefs provide. Create ecotourism attractions at our farm so people can come plant corals with our team or adopt a coral, and take all of that revenue and reinvest it into doing really large-scale projects where ultimately we want to have a coral farm in every country around the world with reefs so that we can help protect them for future generations.
And so how many coral farms would that mean?
There's almost 100 countries and territories with reefs. So it would be around that many coral farms. And they would be, an acre or larger can grow over 1 million pieces of coral a year. And you can think about it like taking a cutting from a flower or a tree that you can then plant. You would take a cutting from a living coral that's native to that reef, that ecosystem, bring it to our farm, and then 6 to 12 months later, go out and plant it down in the ocean again.
And what's the what's the timeline for accomplishing this mighty task and goal?
Certainly in it for the long haul now.
Yeah.
We need to move as quickly as possible because reefs aren't getting any healthier.
Yeah.
But we also, right now, it's a startup. So we need to sort of prove out our whole model. So I'm actually down here in Grand Bahama, where we raised our first round of investment, our seed round, to finance our pilot coral farm. So the science we're working with has all been proven out, but we need to sort of establish Coral Vita's track record. And so we'll be down here for a year or two, building up this first commercial farm, getting our reefs down here restored, and then the plan is we would raise more money this time to do first large-scale farm instead of growing a few thousand corals that our pilot could grow a few 100,000, and then start putting farms like that all around the world. So really just depends how quickly people get on board with our vision for commercial reef restoration. Mm-hmm. It could take decades. It could take years. I don't really know. So we're just moving forward with our plan for now, and hoping we can really help these reefs and all the people that depend on them.
If you had to be very selective due to time restraints on the reefs that you could, like, you're in the Grand Bahamas now, but ideally, what would your next couple of locations be when it comes to saving the larger parts, or what you think would be the most effective way to save, the reefs? Because 100, that's a lot. That's a huge amount. So if you had to choose and you could only do like three, what would the next two be, and why?
It's a tough one because there's some places that are just they're amazing ecosystems. You don't want to see them die, and then there's a lot of places where even if you might not think this is the place we need to be, you know that there are people whose families are being fed by the fish that can survive because of that healthy reef, or the economy is pinned up by that reef tourism industry. So it's tough. We have a couple irons in the fire in some places. Our thought right now is we're starting in the Caribbean. There's a number of reasons for that. The 80% of all the reefs here have died. Some places like the Florida Keys, it's crazy. Florida Keys, 95% of the reefs are dead. So there's a need here. A lot of things that have killed reefs here are due to overfishing. Because if you imagine you catch all the fish, why would that kill the corals? Well, when corals are dying, one of the things that competes for space with them is algae. And if there's no fish left to eat that algae is going to take over all the space, and the corals can't regrow. So you catch too much fish, that causes the corals to die. Pollution kills so many different forms of life, so that's a big one too. And then climate change is the really big one moving forward. Corals can only handle a certain level of changes in temperature and acidity. So the Caribbean reefs need it. There's less species of corals here. So as far as just not wanting to get too carried away with ourselves before we're ready, it's easier to manage 30 or 40 species of coral as opposed to 300 or 400, which is how many there are in, say, Australia or Indonesia. And then there's a big tourism economy here. So we also, again, need to consider where's the best place. So we're looking at Mexico, we're looking at Colombia, but we've also started conversations for Australia and the Seychelles and even Saudi Arabia. So we're going slow and steady for right now, but we're also starting to think, where are the next few best places? And there's a couple good options for that.
Cool. Really interesting. There's so much at stake, and there's so much involved with making the decision. Like any big, decision one has to make, or like policy one enacts, it's not just like one simple solution. So yeah, I just like the fact that obviously you wouldn't have gotten to this point if you weren't so considerate and careful in your approach, but I really enjoy like hearing it, and from a practical standpoint from you.
Well, you also, I think, just kind of touched on a good point as far as our solution. So one thing I'm happy to say, which might not be the most usual thing for a sort of businessman, but Gator and I both, we actually would like to be put out of business. Our mission would be fulfilled when there's no more reefs left to restore. And if we're thinking about what's the best thing to do for coral reefs, it's not to hire us, it's to stop killing them.
Yeah.
We need our leadership in government and in businesses to end overfishing, take care of pollution, stop the march of climate change. We do those things, then people won't need to hire us to restore reefs. So it actually kind of blows my mind. I even had to start up a company to do coral reef restoration. I wanted to work on education reform and peacemaking and all sorts of things that have nothing to do with the environment, let alone coral reef restoration. So this is the solution we're pursuing because we think it's the way it has to go based on status quo right now. But hopefully other people will step up and take care of business, because if people are worried about even things like refugees, well, if these island nations are going underwater and they can't feed themselves and pay the bills because no one's coming to visit there anymore, where are they going to go?
Yeah.
So whether you're in Miami or Ohio or even the middle of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, it doesn't matter. Coral reefs, even if you're not next to the coast, impact so many different things that their health matters really to all of us.
Yeah. One more question before I get into the next one on this topic. What happens when a reef is dead? Like, let's say, you said the Keys, you said 95% of it is dead. What happens when it's completely decimated? How does Coral Vita intervene then?
It's a good question. Some people are starting to set up kind of like gene banks, cryo preserving, thinking about like freezing Austin Powers and he comes back in 30 years.
Yeah.
People are starting to set up places to freeze corals and DNA in the event that they disappear before we can figure out how to keep them alive. Mm-hmm. There's international laws where you can't take corals across international lines and then put them back out in the reefs. That's just to make sure there's no invasive species, things that can help disrupt the ecosystem. Those have been on the books for decades. People are starting to think about, well, we might need to ship heat-tolerant corals from Cuba to Florida, which I just, from a historical perspective, is pretty ironic that we want to bring in Cuban corals to help Florida. Yeah. But that's a different conversation. But it's a very tricky thing to talk about. It's not something that makes a lot of people upset, understandably. And there's still some unknown factors. So as long as you don't have like toxic sewage still being pumped into that spot, if the water quality is returning to normal, even if the reef's dead, there is a chance to bring it back to life. Mm-hmm. But it's tough. It's sad to see. And I remember going down to the Keys, and I've been diving since 2003. So the reefs already around the world were much worse off then. I didn't know what they used to look like from a personal perspective, but I could appreciate it. So I went diving with a guy who had been there in the 70s, myself with the perspective I had. And this couple was their first time ever scuba diving. And the guy who'd been in the 70s comes up and he's basically weeping into his face mask, seeing, this destruction, rubble, no colors, barely any fish. I'm come up and like, shit, that was brutal. And then the other couple who had never been there before, like, oh my God, did you see that grouper? Mm-hmm. So another challenge is this concept of shifting baselines where we get used to bad stuff as normal. And so then we accept it as normal, mm-hmm. when in fact, it's very much not normal. Mm-hmm. So that's, I think, another challenge for us is trying to help bring out this greater awareness and education about what's happening in coral reefs, why they matter, and then what we can do about it to hopefully inspire people to really start protecting them and keeping them healthy.
Whew. Man, I got a lot more questions because of that, but I'm going to try to save them and remember them for the end.
Got your pen and paper? Come on, no, I thought actors take notes.
I've got it. I got it right here. That's what I've been looking down at. So I want to go all the way back. Because like I told you before... Huh?
How far back?
Before you were conceived, actually. I told you this may take a left turn because of, our relationship and history being as old as us. And one thing that is very clear about you is, and your brother, Seth, who's also very successful in his field, is the impact and influence your parents have had on you as individuals. And
our parents.
What?
You and me. I said our parents. You and me both.
Our parents, yeah. Yeah, but I want to. If you want to talk about my parents, sure. But in as concise a way as possible, can you just kind of tell me a little bit about your parents' lineage individually, together, like what their impact and their lives, their journeys, before they created you, have had on you? Because I know there's a lot of the stuff from their past, like as every parent, imparts into their child, wisdoms, experiences. Some of it's literally genetic. It's in the body. And I've just really, really noticed and always admired how, even if it's like Seth, you know, and your mom going at it, or you and your mom going, or whatever, like, even when there's tension, there was always education. You know, there was always some type of growth and evolution happening. So just, you know, in as many words or as few words as you'd like, just a little bit about your parents and who they are and how that's impacted you, and created the person you are right now doing what you're doing.
Well, they deserve a lot of credit for who I am and what I'm doing, and I definitely they deserve the shout out. And I try and give it to them as much as possible. They just raised Seth and I to, I think, do whatever we wanted to do that we were able to do, or could create for ourselves, but at least try and think about how we could be better for other people in addition to taking care of ourselves. I think if we're going to talk about that concept, so as you know, I'm Jewish and not from a very religious background, but definitely it's a part of my identity. And the concept I think that best encapsulates it is called Tikkun Ha'olam. That's what my parents raised my brother and I on, and it basically translates to repair the world. And there's a fascinating history, which if anyone's interested, I encourage people to look up. Behind that concept, it's thousands of years old from a biblical perspective, but then there was a lot of philosophers in the Middle Ages that really came to develop it. And basically it's just, give back. And whatever form that takes, whether it's just acknowledging someone who's having a bad day, that they're there, or doing stuff for the environment, or teaching, or it doesn't really matter. You can translate it into however it manifests itself for you. But it's just that I have the ability to try and make things better, so I might as well go for that. So that's what my parents raised my brother and I on. And going back to my great-grandparents, all but one of them were immigrants, and the other one was his parents were immigrants. And so we draw our roots from a lot of different cultures and traditions, mainly across Europe, but that definitely wove its way down towards my parents. They both were very close with their families, and my mom had deep roots with her grandparents. And that, I think, led to them also having that sense of trying to fix things and make things better. So they actually came to D.C., where they met several years after they moved, because they both wanted to try and help make peace in the Middle East. I wish they had been more successful. It's definitely not on them that we're dealing with all the BS over there today, but they wanted to try and help make things better. And so that's what they definitely, I think, connected about when they realized it the first time they met. While my dad apparently was DJing a party, which still a sight I try to envision. I don't think it was like turntables on a mic. I think it was like he made a mixtape cassette and pressed play. But even still, that's how he was doing when Gail met. And I mean, I think they have a relentless sense of optimism. They've definitely been hit in the face with some pretty unexpected and rough experiences that in turn shaped how I was brought up. I mean, my dad got the worst of it, just as far as think about Knives coming out, and you have this vision of Washington, D.C., where his career was ended for something that wasn't his fault, called the Iran-Contra affair, which was crazy for me to see, because now the guy who's actually responsible for it is the president of the NRA. And it's like, how we can forgive people for actual crimes, and then people who didn't really screw up are the ones to, see their careers disappear. It's a fact of life in the world, so it's a good lesson, even if it's an unfortunate one to learn from a very early age. But they rebounded. They created great lives for themselves, but definitely it was a heavy impact, and that was before I was born, on how I came to be in many ways who I am. And so they've, I think, imparted both the positives of what we can do in life as well as the real truths about resiliency and watching your back, and knowing who your friends are, and the value of trust, and a number of different things I could speak to, but they are amazing human beings, and I love them tremendously. And I couldn't be doing what I'm doing without their support, along with my brothers. And I think that's one of the reasons why our families are so close, is because your mom and my mom both definitely know how to give the love, and also I wouldn't say withhold the love, but keep it real.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and that's, I think, why we've always been. You and I have been very close friends, and then our parents as well. So yeah, shout out Gail and Howard.
Yeah. Gail and Howie. So, one, I didn't know that that's how they met, and that's the reason why they connected, attaining peace in the Middle East. Yeah, the DJing and a common goal. But something I thought was really interesting, and it's kind of helped naturally segue into my next question, is the fact that all but one of your grandparents was an immigrant, and that meant that you have history and legacy. Your family tree, the branches extend to different parts of the world. It's very diverse. So I wanted to know how, and also the fact that they had to go through that unfortunate experience with your father and his career before you were born in regards to the Iran-Contra deal, and being very aware of like who your friends are, who in your community you can trust. If that influenced them to their decision to send you to a DC public school, because that was always a point of discussion because you guys could have gone to private school. I went to private school. Um, I'm better and worse for it. Um, but I thought it was a very interesting decision at the time, and seeing where you guys are now, for them to do that, because that, I guess it's easier financially, but for people that are, like from the circle that your parents and my parents are in DC, it's not the most like, oh yeah, I'm gonna send my kids to DCPS. That's not the first thought that comes to mind. So, um, your experience, how it was shaped in DCPS, what that was like from when you went there to when you graduated, your time at OUDC, because I know that broadened your horizons, and you can go into more detail about what that was. And then also how all of that led you to Yale. And that being an incredibly elite, private, old money, old America, like very steeped in the history of this country, which I know you're a big fan of, how all of those things came into play and have helped you become you today. What is it, June 3rd of 2018?
Simple question right there.
Well, let me know if you need me to go back and
You might need to.
reiterate.
Let me just touch on, I guess, when you brought up my great grandparents, as far as like how that's wove itself into me. Yeah, I'm very aware of, I guess, how lucky I am. Um, I grew up in a good part of DC, and a family that could take care of me, and help support my brother and I in many ways. And then our great grandparents, some of them had to flee um, Eastern Europe at a time when Cossacks were burning villages and killing people because they were Jews, or just sought better opportunities. They weren't fleeing, but they knew life didn't have a lot of promise, and so they left Lithuania. My great grandma left Lithuania in 1904. She was born in 1899. She lived till she was 102, which I always find amazing, but she lived in 3 centuries. So
Yeah.
I got to know her. I got to connect with like what life was like in the 1920s and 10s even, and know that I should and do count my blessings. And then with my grandfathers growing up the streets of Middle Village and the 1920s and 30s in New York during the Great Depression, and you got to basically have that sort of bit of a street fighter mentality, and so the resilience that wove its way. I mean, still to this day, my grandfather is still alive. It's just like the number of times you think he's down for the count and out, and he just picks himself back up and keeps on fighting. And you knew my other grandfather was the exact same way.
Same way, yeah. Fighters.
So the day he died, Herbie, and he just was like this, roots that carry their way through life. So I'm definitely very cognizant, and I appreciate how those stories can weave themselves into me on June 3rd in 2018. I mean, so for the schooling side of things, so Tommy and I went to this private school until third grade for me, called Lowell, which was an amazing place. It was all about experiential education, so it was like learning by doing. So I still remember I learned fractions by salad dressing, geometry and in the garden and stuff like that.
That's still my favorite, so it was a great salad dressing.
Singing meeting, dude.
Singing meeting, John B.
Nothing like that. John B. So that was a great way to get a foundation. And then my parents sent me to DC public schools. And it was something that I guess a number of parents in DC, well, a lot of people it was the only choice, obviously. I mean, I love that Dave Chappelle quote. There's not a lot of poor white people in DC, and there's a lot of poor black people in DC. Mm-hmm. So obviously, privileged to have the choice to send me and my brother
to private. Any poor white people from DC,
right? Not.
I know them from Maryland and Virginia, but from DC, growing up, I didn't know a single poor white person. That's Didn't really even see poor homeless white people that much.
Yeah, if you did, it was usually like a veteran, something like that.
Yeah,
I've gone likely through some trauma, but yeah, it's Dave. Dave's got the wisdom.
Dave's brilliant. Yeah.
So, anyways, to be in a position where my parents can make that choice is the whole thing. But I'm eternally grateful that my parents sent me to DC public schools. Obviously, some of them are not places we should be sending our children, and that's a failure on so many levels of our leaders. But at least for the schools I went to, in addition to just being good schools, despite the rep that DCPS has, just getting to grow up with kids from all around town, having that ability to not just be in the upper Northwest bubble, and knowing people from different.
Can you just real quick tell people, because no one from DC, people that are not from DC aren't going to know what Upper Northwest is.
Yeah, it's a wealthier part of town that's almost kind of feels like you're in the suburbs in the city at times. Just more space and lots of green areas, and just it's a well-off part of town. And I went to Wilson, which drew from all around the city, which was, 15-20% white, which was certainly not like private schools down the road where you're paying $40,000 or $50,000 a year, and
where the president's kids go or went.
Right. And where it's much more of a homogenous community. Yeah. And so, I'm eternally grateful for that. I got to play high school football, and my friends and teammates were from all around town, and that's not an experience I would have had going to a private school. And so, it was definitely something that shaped my life in many ways. And then it was at that time in high school, you asked me before about Operation Understanding DC. So I was in a program, which also Tommy's younger brother, Chris, was in, called Operation Understanding DC, or UDC, which is for Black and Jewish kids in the DC area, including Maryland and Virginia. It's promoting ways to eradicate racism, anti-Semitism, and discrimination of all kinds by doing a year-long program based around sort of learning about each other's cultures and backgrounds, which culminates in this epic month-long bus trip, basically following the route of the Freedom Riders to the South and visiting like the places from the civil rights movement, and meeting with many of the either the leaders or just people who were fighting on the front lines in the 50s and 60s and into the 70s. And
Keep talking.
yeah,
Keep talking.
that was a big thing for me too. I'm still affiliated with the program in some ways, and 14 years in high school every year. I think I was class 13. I think it's like class 22 now. And yeah, I think it's that imparted for me definitely more empathy and the belief in why dialogue matters. That even when you have some of the most entrenched problems with deep, almost tribal roots, where people have long memories and they don't want to get over stuff, or something that's flash in the moment, the ability to try and find ways to connect with each other so that you can solve problems rather than just building walls and isolating each other, and not just building walls, but building stereotypes, and often can lead to sort of hatred for really stupid reasons. So having that ability to connect with other people who aren't from sort of my background, my station, my whatever, my belief system, my religion, you just keep going through all the different identities that we all have for ourselves. Super grateful that I had that opportunity, and I had great friends from the program, great memories and experiences, and I guess the other thing, how that led me to Yale. Yeah, and that was definitely a shock to the system when I did get to a place like Yale. I mean, I was definitely a bit of a nerd when I was a kid, so I liked
Has
school
something
in
changed?
some ways. I there's plenty of times I didn't enjoy going to school, but I always like to learn. So I did get to go there, which was a great experience. But definitely, I guess one of the things I didn't realize growing up, going to DCPS, I learned very quickly my freshman year at Yale. It's like I just assumed everyone walked through metal detectors when they went to school. And getting there, people were like, "Man, this is a really diverse place." And it was like, I don't know. For me, it felt like the whitest place I had ever been for. So having a shift in terms of my world, going from DC to a place like Yale, but even still there, having an amazing experience and getting to know, again, different communities, different people, awesome opportunities, great. Obviously, a lot of things I've been able to do in life came from just having that on my resume, which is kind of BS in some ways because it's not how you should judge people. But I certainly appreciate that opportunity, in addition to just being a fun place to go to school. I got to have great classes, make great friends. Also unlocked a lot of doors for me that aren't always afforded to other people. And then I did go back there for my master's degree at their environmental school at the Yale School of Forestry and Environmental Studies, which is where I met Gator, and we came up with the idea for Coral Vita. So definitely, again, plays a big role in who I am and what I'm doing now. And I feel like that was a super long-winded response to your line of questions, but
Very long.
I guess is how all of that has woven together from my ancestors to my upbringing to where I am today.
June 3rd, 2018.
June 3rd.
I mean, it was a long-winded answer to a long-winded question, and it was articulated very well and clearly and concisely, which we all appreciate. So moving on from, it's actually a perfect point. You met Gator while doing your master's program at Yale, and that's when you guys, over the next months, year or two, started to develop the idea, the seed, which eventually blossomed into what is now Coral Vita. So I'd like to hear a little bit about that process and that journey that you guys went on together, you embarked on together, but also how your love for scuba diving plays into all of this. Because I know that that's a huge part of why you do this. Um, you literally got a family of three black kids, literally, like you and your family, you and your father, and your mother. Just the excitement. I didn't want to fucking scuba dive. I'm I was terrified. I'm still terrified. But I'm internally grateful that we did do that. That I am certified. I don't know if I'm certified anymore. It's probably expired. But that I've had those experiences. That should be good. Um, and I really owe that to the Teichers, because otherwise I don't think my mother would have been able to convince us. You know, if it wasn't for that trip to Greece, which we took because you were there already. So just your family's love for that activity really changed my life, and it gave me experiences that I would not have otherwise, and was introduced to worlds that literally worlds that exist underneath the surface of the ocean, that I would not have seen if
It's
it
like an
wasn't for
alien
you guys.
planet. Really, it is like other worlds, except it's right here.
It's right here, and so just
Yeah,
it's like how it influenced and inspired James Cameron to do Avatar. Like a lot of that was taken from his love from scuba diving, and that's a movie that a lot of those visuals, and that's a movie that I think is incredibly visually captivating and inspiring. It may not be the most original story, but visually, it's like it
yeah.
hits me right here. So yeah, so your journey to create Coral Vita with Gora, with wow, your journey to create Coral Vita with Gator, and your love for scuba diving, how those two coexist.
Well, I think a big part of it goes back to not knowing what the fuck I want to do, actually. I was very torn. I touched on this a bit before. It was like 18 things I wanted to work on, and none of them were really environmental or entrepreneurial. I mean, you mentioned Greece. I got a chance in college to go on an archaeology expedition for a summer, digging up, ancient Greek sites. And part of me was like, wow, get my Indiana Jones on. That'd be a pretty cool way to spend my life. And coming from DCPS, I was like, this was a great experience, but it's not as good as nearly as good as it should be for so many students. So I want to work on education reform. And my parents had that national security background, and so I was interested in that. And so I guess going into grad school, I at that point was focused on the environment, and that was because I saw climate change as this real, clear, and present danger that impacted all the things I cared about and all the people that I love, and that was my way of channeling so that I could affect multiple things by focusing on climate change. Not to mention, I just had a lifelong love for nature, and I couldn't believe that we're killing our planet is one thing, and then also like people always talk about like, oh, the polar bears and the animals, and like, yeah, it's sad, and I certainly care about that, but ultimately we're screwing ourselves because human civilization has only been able to come into existence as like advanced society in a very, very specific climatic window in Earth's long history. And it's like, we throw that out of whack, what's going to happen?
It's like humans, bitch, be humble, sit down.
Right. Be humble.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's what Earth needs to say that. Well, it is saying that to us.
Huh? So anyways, that's why I ended up working on climate change. And even from that perspective, I was coming at more from the policy side of things. And Gator actually, he had more of a science background, was thinking about maybe doing a PhD. And we both felt that governments and nonprofits and sort of academia in this context of coral reefs weren't moving at the scale or effectiveness needed to really help solve this problem. We work with all those different groups to try and create a solution together. We're not saying this is going to be all Coral Vita, all us. It requires a lot of partnerships and a lot of hard work. And hopefully other people will come in to start coral reef restoration companies. Then we can really actually help solve this problem. But that's where I guess the idea for the company came from, those experiences on our end, together with my experience between college and grad school. I lived in Mauritius. I worked for my buddy's small NGO called Eli Africa, partnered up with the UN and the Mauritius Oceanography Institute to do a coral farming project. And I got to see that you could bring a reef back to life, that fishermen were setting up their traps 100 yards away from the project because there were so many more fish. But that grant-funded small-scale model with underwater farms, only growing limited species of corals that could wash away if there's a storm, ain't going to cut it for the scope of the problem. Then take that experience, Gator Group in San Diego, lifelong love for the ocean, my love since I was a child of scuba diving, deep personal passion together with this belief that the status quo wasn't good enough, and maybe creating a company could help change that, and doing a for-profit, for-good company, mission-driven organization um, that had never been done before. No one really had tried to do commercial coral reef restoration, and it's not like we've accomplished it yet, right? We still got a long road ahead of us, but I guess that's where it all came together. And I still got one more chance. I was very lucky while in grad school, and that's what the idea for Coral Bay was around, to have like one last sort of go at the policy side of things, which being a DC kid, I thought policy was, and I still think is, a good way to help improve people's lives if done the right way. So I got to intern working on climate change adaptation policy at the Obama White House. And it was amazing. It really was. And then I had a conversation with a senior person there who's actually on the National Security Council, believe it or not. Just, again, funny way threads come back in my dad's history, because that's where he had worked. And she was like, listen, you could pursue this in government, and I think you could have a great career from it, but go start that company, because you could make a huge difference. And if it doesn't work, and this is an attitude I have, if it doesn't work, then we tried. I'll go do something else. But we'll give it a go. Mm-hmm. And that was when we had no money. We got our first grant from Yale for $1,000 that let us go down to Florida to meet the scientist who had developed the way to grow corals faster at the Moat Marine Lab. We didn't have enough money to stay at a hotel, so we were sleeping in our rental car, which sucked for Gator more than me, because he had to deal with my snoring all night. We couldn't roll down the windows because there was mosquitoes and all that. Yeah. So, we went from that to, like, it was an idea on the back porch, sipping on beers, to just enough money to try and convince this one scientist to get on board with our vision, to summer accelerator program at the Yale School of Forestry and the university that let us build out our business model, to starting to actually get investors to buy in our vision, and then getting into more sort of fellowships to allow us to sort of grow the idea, to raising enough money we needed to actually start the first farm, and then finding the right place, which now is Grand Bahama for our first coral farm. And I mean, it's where I'd be if I had gone down that path, who knows? But next week, I can't really believe it. I'm very blessed. I've got invited to speak about Coral Vita at the United Nations, and that opportunity is pretty mind blowing. And I'm, again, grateful for that opportunity, and then for my parents to raise me, that I could be the person that can, work on a company like Coral Vita, right? You really can trace roots. But if I had been some, government bureaucrat working my way up in my mid-20s, no way I would have been afforded that opportunity. It's not to say people shouldn't pursue public service. They should. This is my way, I guess, of doing public service. But it's crazy the roads that can sort of emerge and you can build for yourself, and that you can follow and trip over. And, there have been plenty of tough moments for us. It hasn't all been sunshine and rainbows. We've had some valuable, hard, teachable moments as well. But this path that I found myself on is very exciting, and I'm lucky to be doing what I'm doing, and I hope we can make a good, positive difference for the world through our work at Coral Vita.
I genuinely believe you will.
Thanks.
Last two questions. The first one is, what makes you rise and thrive on a daily basis? Like, what is it inside of you that's that ball of energy that's churning away, that keeps you going and keeps you pushing? And instead of just, accepting a normal life, why, you've put yourself through everything you've put yourself through for this company and for something you believe so deeply in. And then also, what is your greatest fear?
Well, there's one thing that makes me rise and thrive every day, and there's certainly plenty of days where it's still a struggle. Mm-hmm. Got plenty of my own issues that I got to deal with. Um, and I don't know. Part of it is a love for what I do. That definitely helps.
Mm-hmm.
I'm again lucky to be doing something that I love. Part of it also is, I don't want to say anger, but it does kind of piss me off. It's almost like a chip on my shoulder that, like I said, I shouldn't have this bullshit that I have to create a coral reef restoration company. Like, those are words I should not be uttering. But that's how bad things are, so we got to do it.
Yeah.
We got some, unfortunately, it can feel like we're in really dark times these days. And it pisses me off that we are, because it's unnecessary. It's the 21st century. We should be acting like it's 2018, not 1918. So that definitely helps drive me, because I'm like, we can fix this because we have to. And I get to interact with awesome people, whether it's students who are excited to learn about coral reefs, or fishermen who we're trying to work with on our projects. Gator and Steven, who's our chief science officer, who's like the real coral guru, and our advisors and our investors and partnerships we're building, and it's exciting. And that definitely helps me get going for the day and keep going. And there's definitely, like I said, moments where the resiliency can wane and you feel like you're sapped, and there definitely are still tough days. But we got to do this, because we can't leave our world worse than we inherited it.
Mm-hmm.
So fears. I'm definitely scared of reefs dying, but putting that aside, you know me, I don't like heights. I'm getting better at that. I'll try and push myself, paragliding and jumping off cliffs into the ocean, and doing stuff to try and get over that. Definitely much better than I was as a kid, but I still don't enjoy them. But I don't know. I'm not trying to sound arrogant here, but like, fear of not doing the right thing, and at least trying to make a better difference. Because being a bum, um, it's, who judges that is up for debate. But as long as, like, I'm feeling like I'm, doing what I can, the fear of not doing that makes me very sad. So that's also, I guess, a motivator for doing what I'm doing, because it makes me overcome that fear. Yeah, I think that, besides fear of being crushed by DC Sports one last time, but I think I've gotten used to that at this point.
Yeah,
Cats,
so.
baby,
Yeah.
Stanley Cup, we're there, we're almost there, 2 more wins. Let's go do the things we love, and do it with people we love, and enjoy our time here, because it is limited, and there's amazing things and opportunities, and hopefully people will have the opportunity to pursue what matters to them, and what brings them happiness. And as we said in Greece, ola kala, it's all good. I think having that attitude at the end of the day, even when things aren't, but finding a way to not just be happy, because you're not always going to be happy, but finding contentment, finding the ability to just, things are right. I appreciate that things could be worse, and let's make things better from there. Let's go have fun. Let's go do things. All that jazz. Ola kala, it's all good. And finding a path to ola kala, finding a path to it's all good, I think, is a good way to rise and thrive every day.
I would agree. That's a very timely message, especially for this guy who has just been going through ups and downs, and just putting on some Bob Marley, and just listening to some "Don't Worry," about a thing, because every little thing is gonna be all right, and
All right.
That which does not kill me shall only make me stronger. Just quotes and messages and images and reminders that it can always be worse. And even if it is worse, you're not dead. We're not dead, and we don't know what happens on the other side. So maybe that's not the worst. You know, I'm not saying to seek death, but maybe we shouldn't fear it as much, and just understand that we're healthy. We have all of our limbs, a functioning body, a functioning mind, ambitions, support systems, love, well fed. Not too much to be ungrateful for. So I want to end on that.
Oh, I was gonna just say I know one of the ways to say like how you doing like and you respond by saying I'm okay in Haitian Creole is moi pas mal, which actually means it could be worse. That's your way of saying I'm good because
Yeah,
you're recognizing that I could be worse, so I'm good.
yeah. It can always be worse. It's hard to yeah. It's sometimes hard to step out of oneself and remember that and just remind ourselves day after day. This is something that I do. I started doing is I do a death prayer, where I wake up in the morning. I'm not like praying for death, but I wake up and the first thing I say, hopefully I remember, is death. I know you are inevitable, so I will live today with humility, grace, and urgency. It's just a reminder for keeping me on my shit because you know people die every day, and who's to say it's not going to be us in the next moment? So why not make the most of this one because it's the only one that exists. So I know you got to go. I got to go as well, but I want to close off. If you have any like shout outs or anything you want to make, anyone you want to like give thanks to, like anything that you have coming up. I know you're speaking at the UN, social media handle and all that. And then after that, I just want to like get you saying rise and thrive in your most
Gosh, dude.
in your most authentic, Sam Teicher way of saying it. It doesn't have to be crazy, but
Like I said before, shout out to my parents and my brother, my grandparents, friends, everyone that got me here. Like I said at the beginning, you and your family, our family. I appreciate that friendship and that love. Um, for all you out there, I hope you guys have a great day. Come plant some corals with us sometime. We'd love to have you down here helping out. If you want to learn more, it's Coral Vita with a T. It's www.coralvita.co.com. Was taken by some Eastern European cosmetics manufacturer. Go figure. So it's .co. And then on Instagram and all that stuff is at Coral Vita Reefs. So check us out, and yeah, love to have you helping the corals out, whether you want to plant them or spread the word or adopt a coral, wherever it may be. There's a way to make a difference if you want to. So yeah, happy to be here and get out there and rise and thrive, baby. Rise and thrive.
hey, my guy, let them know, fam. Let them know what time it is, fam.
Yeah, man, you gotta go down to the islands and rise and thrive.
Man needs to come down there now and see some of the sunshine, man. It's been very nice out here in Bristol lately, though. I get enough vitamin D. My skin brown.
Batty boy Bristol.
Huh?
Batty boy Bristol.
Batty boy. That's a derogatory term, Sam. You can't
It was
say
just
that.
going for alliteration, all
right? Yeah. If the Caribbeans hear that, you may lose your license.
Listen, I once got called out one time for saying bumbleclot around a Caribbean ambassador. Like, boy, what you saying bumbleclot for?
Yeah, you can't just go around saying that shit. All right, brother. I gotta go. I gotta go piss. I've had to go piss for the last 30 minutes. Thank you very, very much. I love you, and break legs at the UN.
Yeah, dude. Let's just have a proper catch up soon.
Okay.
love to hear how things are going in Bristol and life and all that jazz.
Cool. I hope we have like.
What you,
I hope there was a place where we gave enough time between Rise and Thrive and this last bit of conversation to end it.
you can just end it when we start like shouting out random Caribbean accents.
Yeah,
End it there.
I'll end it there.
Before the Bobby Boy.
Yeah. All right, brother. I'm over here doing my pee dance. I love you.
Love you, dude. Peace.